song was called Brick House by the Commodores? No, I'm wrong gig. So, let's talk about this tune for a second. This is, as a drummer, this one's more fun to play because it draws upon some of the things we all work on as students, right? Jazz independence, transitions, you know, all the different sounds. So I find that pretty interesting. The main idea of the groove is just jazz ride sample, right? Almost like I'm playing an up-tempo Stevie Wonder song. So if I'm thinking like a DJ's idea of swing is superstition. So that's kind of where that comes from. Sped up. So that's the main idea of the groove. So like this hybrid of Jamaican dub and then also jazz. So if you think about it, you know, DJs are very much like musicologists. It's not just patterns. They're trying to cop things that have been done before. And then I'm trying to be the musicologist and recreate it on like an acoustic electric hybrid thing-a-do. It's like I'm trying to be this mad scientist when you write a song, trying to then think about how you're going to recreate that on the kit. So I think about this as the DJ area, acoustic area, jazz. And trying to navigate those all through the sounds. Does that make sense? Other questions so far? Yes, sir.
Are you changing your hand technique to get those different textures on the snare drums?
Yes, I am. The strange thing about, and that's a great question because that's something I wrestle with. I have the inner school drummer in me that's like, hands are always like this, right? And so what I find when I play this type of music is I have to throw that all out of the window and just make the sound, which then means a lot of times I'm choking very much back on the stick, almost like I'm not even holding it, so I get a huge backbeat. I'm also tilting the snares forward to have a difference in terms of the ghost note to the backbeat ratio, like a programmer would do, rather than, I'm not thinking, as much as I love this stuff, like James Brown or Clyde Stubblefield or David Garibaldi, I'm trying to get away from that organic part of it and make it sound very machine-like. And then, same thing with my right hand. I'm trying to make almost like a finger technique where each note is very even, like so that snare feels. Just so that I'm able to get those staccato sounds on the kit, right? So that I'm able to mimic that sort of thing. Also, in this, I use a lot of cross stick because a lot of samples are layered together with cross stick and acoustic snare drum. So I'll let the trigger handle the snare sample, and then have the cross stick have the mic pick that up and sort of put that together. That's a really characteristic thing in the style. So a lot of times this snare drum is my cross stick duty, and then my right hand is programmer snare duty. So I might play something like sort of make that sound as if somebody was programming it. And I don't know if you guys know, I'm a huge MPC head, like the drum machine, the MPCs, the Native Instruments machine, and all that is this. So I'm trying to sort of mimic that together, if that makes sense. So a lot, you know, it's very, and the same thing goes with the hi-hats. I'll bring this hand over here. I'm trying to make that its own sound, rather than the inflection within this. I don't want it to sound organic, so I'll have 3 different hats. That's sort of got a loose sound. I can do closed or loose, and then this is just 808, you know, old LL Cool J. If anybody wants to rap with me, come on up. Are there other questions? Yeah, please.
3 questions.
3 questions, all right.
Yeah. First of all, what program are you using? How are you routing it to the program? And how do your triggers work?
Got it. What program am I using? How do I route that program? What triggers am I using? Or no, what are my triggers hooked into, right?
Like, how do you.
Gotcha. All right. So the main program that I use is Ableton Live. I'm an addict for that program. It's a very drumistic program. I've been using drum machines since elementary school, so which makes me, you know, decently old. And so I grew up with like 808s, 909s, and MPCs. And what you would do on the MPC is you would chop up a sample and then you would put it all over the pads and try to play grooves, but they always had to be played back at the original tempo. So if you were playing like if you took John Bonham's When the Levee Breaks and it said 87 beats a minute, you had to always trigger at 87. Once Ableton Live came out, it's called warping, and you can speed up or slow down that track in any sort of. Are you familiar with Ableton?
No.
All right, so check this out. This is pretty cool. The idea on Ableton Live is that you can speed up or slow down audio as if it were MIDI. So you can, throughout the course of a tune, if people are dancing or you want them to dance more, you want them to jump up and rave, you can then make the tempo go faster. So if I'll take just the verse of this tune. Here, let me turn that down just a little bit so I don't kill anybody. So this is at 120, all right? Let's say we're really feeling it that night. We want people just to go crazy. 165. Oh, we want to go back to 130. So you're able to take that audio and bring it up or down without affecting the pitch. Previously, if you wanted to speed up a song, the pitch got higher, like Alvin and the Chipmunks. Well, this sort of stays the same, so I have pedals down here. I could change the tempo if I want to. I can tap tempo and change it, so it makes it, like this gentleman was asking with the loops, this makes it a bit more interactive, where I can change things on the fly rather than being tethered to it. In terms of the routing, for today, I just have a stereo mix out of here. Click is on the right, track is on the left. And so I've got track here, click here, and then to the house PA, I'm just routing a mono signal out of the laptop, out of an interface. And then the way that I break up the electronics is all the samples and ear candy are on the multi-pad, right? And then one of the trigger pedals down here. And then all of the drum triggering and all the really fat sort of layered samples that I'm using with the kick are then through the main Yamaha DTX 900 module. So I let them live in their own respective areas. That way, in my mind, I'm able to break it up. Ear candy and samples that I'm triggering, drumistic stuff. And those triggers going to here. And this is just for my own personal headphone mix, because if I'm not feeling the kick or anything, then I'm not able to do my job. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, how do your triggers work on your acoustic drums? That was my last
Oh, how do they work? What they're doing is they're like piezo sensors, and what they do is they sort of pick up all the different hits that I'm doing. So they go into this drum module and trigger them. So if I turn this back up, that would help. Right, so here's the sound by itself, and then it's being triggered from this sensor right here, and you're layering them together. And then I've got that on the kick, the snare, the second snare, the floor tom.
Is it reading it off the head or the?
It's reading it right off this head right here. There's like a little trigger sensor that goes along the head here. This clamp pulls up, and then you've got a sensor right here that's reading it. So it's probably not the best thing to do, but I'll need a new one after that.
Is that the same for all your drums?
Yes, so I've got on the kick, the 2 snares, and the floor, and then these sort of handle all the samples and stuff. Things like that. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
How did you get into this in the first place? I mean, did you like meet a DJ and then go from there, or how did it work?
The question was, how did I get into this in the first place? I couldn't be farther from where I started. I went to Berkeley on a jazz scholarship, and then I did my master's degree. I got a scholarship for the big band at Wayne State University, so like I played jazz all throughout my formative years. I'll give you the short Cliff Notes version. When I got to LA, like I was saying at the beginning of the clinic, I felt like I was prepared for anything because I had shut all my grooves, I could read well, I was good with the click, all those sorts of things. But then when I got to LA, it was like a whole other level. It was like, okay, kid, you can do all that stuff, but now you have to understand all the electronics, how to route your own signals in the studio, how to mic up your drums. And this was 15 years ago. We're not even talking recently. And so it really forced me to up my game. And the one gentleman that did that, or two, was DJ Logic and John Medeski. And John Medeski was a hero of mine. He was getting into it about 2000. He was getting into this whole loops and samples thing in the DJ culture, and it was before laptops. And so he made this record called Hydraulic Groove, which is all loops and samples. So when we jammed in the studio a couple times, and he asked me if I could do this stuff on stage, so I said, yes, right? That whole thing, and I couldn't do any of it. So I just, I bought MVCs, I bought drum machines, I learned to sample, and I figured out how to trigger on the drums. And I really was lucky. I learned on the gig. We used to play with John and DJ Logic. We played about 300 dates a year. Like we did like Bonnaroo, and those sorts of festivals. And I was just really allowed to make mistakes on stage. Like one time I was playing on stage and had a kit kind of like this, and I didn't realize that all of you electronic guys will understand this. I didn't understand what threshold was, which is how sensitive your triggers are set. So guitar player comes out on stage, he goes, wow, as the curtain opens and all my triggers go off and all the loops start playing at once. It was glorious, let me tell you. I think that was the one time I may have actually cried on a gig.